Thank you so much to everyone at Parallax for making this launch possible, and so grateful that you're all here. This is a song from Reverend Sekou. It's one of the songs on my playlist, which is in the book. All the authors put our kind of favorite music in the book. So here's a taste of all this music. This song is called Welcome Home, which we want to offer all of us welcome to this call, and it echoes the teachings in our book. You hear well?
No matter where you are on life's journey, where you're coming from, you can always go this place home. No matter where you've been or what you've done, no matter where you are on life's journey, or where you're coming from, you can always call this place home. No matter where you've been or what you've done. Welcome home. Welcome home. Welcome home. Wars and rumors of wars are never ceasing, and hope in tomorrow is ever fleeting, and our dreams have been broken into 1,000 pieces, but we'll still find a reason for believing. No matter where you are on life's journey, or where you're coming from, you can always call this
That was wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. I wasn't expecting to get into the musical vibe right before this, but I really, really appreciate that. I realized I was amiss in introducing myself. I'm one of your co-facilitators today. I'm Elizabeth McKellar. I'm the Director of Sales Marketing and New Media here at Parallax Press, and I just have the honor of being able to celebrate this launch and this wonderful book coming out into the world with you all. Next, I would like to introduce Dr. Larry Ward, who has graciously agreed to offer some words. So Dr. Larry Ward is a senior Dharma teacher, author of our book, America's Racial Karma, An Invitation to Heal. That's just out now, also in audiobook format. Thank you so much, Larry. Dr. Ward brings about over 25 years of international experience in organizational change and local community renewal to his work as director in the Lotus Institute and as an advisor to the Executive Mind Leadership Institute at the Drucker School of Management. He holds a PhD in religious studies with an emphasis on Buddhism and the neuroscience of meditation. I'm really excited to have you here, Dr. Larry Ward, and I'll pass that on to you.
My pleasure. Greetings to you all. I'm here because I'm honored to be a small flicker in the precious lives who've written this book. And I say precious lives because they are precious. We all know that. But they are also precious because they do not keep that preciousness to themselves. They are willing to do the spiritual work of sharing the spiritual journey as it intersects with their personal lives, their social lives, and their cultural lives. And when I read their writing, I was inspired that more of us need to come together in small configurations and work through our spiritual practice so that it is grounded in our individual lives and grounded in our cultures. And so that we can see that the wisdom of being a human being is transparent. Nobody owns it. No one controls it. It is a gift of the universe itself. And to do this as three people, I know is a miraculous weave of prayer and sacrifice and courage. So I just want to say thank you for producing such a wonderful book, Parallax, and for you three precious ones who I've known a long time for writing it. Write some more. Encourage the rest of us some more to not be so quiet. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Larry Ward, for your wonderful words. Next, I would love to invite Marisela to share and read an excerpt of maybe one of your favorite or most moving passages from the book, if you would.
Good evening, everyone. I'm wondering if we might have just a few minutes to breathe together. Would be lovely. So invite us to, if we're lucky to have feet, to maybe lift them up one at a time and place them back on the ground and just drop into just that, just feet, in awe of the feet, and breathe into the feet. And just get really intimate with your feet. What's it feel like? What sensations Just paying some attention to feet. Depending on your time zone, you may have been on it all day. Let's just close with inviting ancestors from the earth to come up into us from the feet and bring their energy to grace us and hold us through this whole body, and that we can continue them in the most beautiful way. Thank you, everyone. And wanting to thank Ancestor Tai, without whose presence we wouldn't be here today. I'm sorry, y'all. Let me just be transparent. I wanted to just spend the whole time with the the camera on the shirt that says Village of Love and Resistance, but I was told I needed to show my face, so that's why I'm kind of cut off. Just in full transparency. Yes, so thank you, Tai, for the practice, for the beautiful teachings that your Bodhisattva heart transmitted to us. That none of us would be together right now without having some connection and this transformation that has occurred for all of us. And I want to offer a special thank you to Valerie Brown, Kaira Jewel Lingo. Wonderful friends along this path. And then just the deepening of our practice and the deepening of the healing that occurred through this book and could happen with them. Spiritual friends is all of the journey, not part of the journey. And that really, really happened. So I revealed myself in ways I didn't know I could. And I'm still reverberating from that as well. So thank you. Lots of love for you. Let me see if I can do this. I've been doing this. Can't make it happen. Like when the little hearts come out. No, it won't happen. Okay. All right. So, and then also Parallax Press for taking us on, and as different as we were and are, and bringing a different voice, a different Dharma voice, and being willing to love us and support us. So thank you. And everyone at Parallax. And for everyone here, I recognize a lot of you. I see BBMC in the house. I see Garrison in the house. I see Arise in the house. And I see Mahasanga in the house. So thank you. And friends, chosen family, thank you. So wanted to, Baija in the house, woohoo, yeah. Wanted to, so the question around reading something that stood out was kind of hard. So I just decided to go from the beginning. So that's what I'm doing. I'm reading, I'm reading from the first chapter, which is titled Grounding in the Ancestors. And as you may know, the way this book came about was conversations, really Dharma sharings between the three of us and we posed questions. We gathered a series of questions, and each time we met, we took up one of the questions and shared on it. And the question would just be the start, and then as we shared our stories, it would touch something else in one of us, and that other person would take off from there. So it was really beautifully organic. And so the question in this first chapter came from asking about our early spiritual years, the roots that brought us in our spiritual world from our upbringing to this Plum Village tradition that we met together in. And so my response to that question, it bounced off Valerie's response initially, and this is kind of how it was beautiful in the way it flowed that way. So I'll just read. I could really connect with Valerie's sharing of the Catholicism that she came up with and influenced her. That was my inspiration. Also, being born in Belize in the Caribbean. We call it the heart of the Caribbean basin because it's right in the middle of the Caribbean basin and also part of Central America, colonized by the Spaniards and then the British. We have people of African and Native Indigenous descent in addition to the English, Scottish, and Spaniards, as well as people of Asian descent who settled in Central America. We're really a very multi-ethnic country. The majority of us call ourselves Creole. The main influence in my upbringing was Catholicism because my family was Catholic on my mother's side. When I was 9, 10, 11 years old, the public schools that I attended were Catholic schools, and they were always connected to a church. I was going to St. Ignatius School, and there was St. Ignatius Church. I would ask my grandma permission to go early to school so I could go to church early before class. I was 11 or 10 years old, and I wouldn't tell my classmates because I knew it was very weird. The early morning mass in the church was before classes started, and if there were 7 or 8 people, there was a lot. But there was such serenity, such spirit in the space that as a child, as a young person, I felt so connected to something that I could only touch within that space, where we could read the Bible, and there would be mass, and just the recitation of the words that connected me to something that I knew was ever present, but rose up or showed itself more or presented itself more in that little church in Belize. That was my favorite thing to do every day, to go before class and sit in the pews in the back and be in mass and just feel so lifted up. So I had a Catholic upbringing, and it was in Catholicism that I touched the spirit world and knew there was something in me that was very much spiritual, that went beyond the mundane of this 10-year-old child going to school. I became exposed to Buddhism and started reading about Buddhism more from an intellectual perspective, I would have to say, in the 90s. It wasn't until the 2000s that I actually practiced Buddhism, meaning going to a Sangha in the Tibetan tradition. I would sit downstairs in this little tiny row house in one of the busiest chaotic streets in East Baltimore, next to Hip Hop Fish and Chicken. And in Tibetan Buddhism, I think really in some of the chanting and some of the rituals, I started again to touch that spirit, that faith I knew from a child. And I wanted to discover that more because in the interim of coming to the United States and probably the early 90s, my connection to spirituality, to any kind of cultural, spiritual, or worship tradition was very little. So I will stop there.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I was hoping to ask a question after that. I appreciate you starting from the beginning. And I think my question is also at the beginning of, how was the seed planted for the creation of Healing Our Way Home? Would you feel comfortable sharing kind of that story, that background, and how that seed flourished into this wonderful book that we have now?
Yes. So this was it, did we decide it was 2017? Yeah, okay. 2017, at a conference of mindfulness and education in Washington, D.C., that the three of us were at, along with Sister Peace. And I don't know if someone wants to flash that photo up on the screen. Well, while it's getting put together, I'll go ahead. I think at the end of the conference, we were sitting together, the four of us, talking about what a joy it was to be together in one place. Black teachers in our tradition, not that many of us. So we've kind of been holding each other closely, right? Because that's more new in Buddhism, is just Black teachers and Black practitioners. So whenever we landed together, we celebrated. So yeah, I'm sorry, I'm still looking. But so at that, as we sat together, Valerie said, we ought to write a book. So the suggestion came out of the fact that we were sort of celebrating the fact that all four of us found ourselves together. Not planned, by the way. None of us knew the other one was going to be there at that conference. So not planned, and landing together and just being just so happy and thrilled. We were just so happy to be in each other's company, and celebrating that we were together, talking and teaching about mindfulness, and being connected through Thai. And so Valerie's suggestion came up, and I think we all said, yeah, let's do that. That was 2017. It took a minute. Here we go. Here's that fateful day, back in 2017. You can see all four of us having lunch. We were partying already. And we were very happy. You can see that we were really happy to be together as we are now. And Sister Peace is in Canada and was unable to join us today. So fast forward, it came back up I think just before the pandemic started. It came back up. We talked about it. Unfortunately, Sister Peace couldn't join us because of her schedule and what was going on in her life. And so we then started meeting together over a year, right? Like a year and a half maybe, of the initial meeting and sharing on different topics that we co-created. And then the rest is history, as they say. Parallax was kind enough to transcribe, and then the editing, the not so fun part happened, back and forth. And then here we are today. Yeah, so thank you. And if I've left nuggets out, please, I'll invite Kaira Jewel or Valerie to share. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing, and also for that wonderful glimpse of the beginning of this. I loved the photo. Thank you so much for sharing that and finding that. I will now ask Kaira Jewel if you're ready to share maybe a moving or important excerpt from the book.
Yes, and so beautiful to hear your reading, Marisela. That's just one experience I want to share, not in a bragging way, but all the times we would, edit and then send it to Parallax and get comments back. It would, sometimes be a few months in between or some time. And when I would pick up the manuscript again and go through it, I would always be so moved. Like every time, even though I had read those words before, it was especially just treasuring the stories and the deep personal shares of Valerie and Marisela. So just I always love to hear you share your stories. I think I'll speak from I think it's chapter 2, home, place, and belonging, where we are asking each other what is home? Where are we from? How do we find home in ourselves? Those were some of the questions in this. Oh, by the way, I do have a printed copy. Let me show you. Adam, my husband, bought one. As we're waiting for our author copies to arrive, but yeah, so nice to hold this in my hand. It's a bit thicker than I thought too. We have a lot to share in here. Okay, so this is Marisela and Valerie have both spoken some, so I'm jumping in the conversation. The experience of leaving the monastic life was a powerful experience of having to trust myself and my own still small voice inside that was not lining up with what other people around me were saying for the first time in my life. I remember being so afraid to leave and wondering how I could possibly survive. I remember that I felt that the only way I could really truly practice was in the monastery, and that my whole life was going to fall apart if I left. Leaving felt like going into the wilderness. It is also true that I learned a lot about touching my true home inside of me as a nun in the monastery, especially as I watched Thai as we traveled to so many places and had to show up and offer something meaningful in all these different contexts and cultures. I had a deepening confidence and trust in myself. I realized that there was this energy that I could call up even in situations where I didn't think it would be possible. For example, when I hadn't gotten any sleep and was jet lagged, and as soon as we landed in Macau, I was assigned to lead deep relaxation with Sister Chung Kong. I was able to do that. I had the energy for things I didn't think I could do. There was this sense of finding a source in myself, the wellspring I was able to draw from. The wellspring I was able to draw from is what we call bodhicitta, the wish to serve, the bodhisattva path of being a channel to bring relief and healing to places of distress and suffering. That's what gave me energy I didn't think I had. When I was a nun, that sense of home was so connected to the community, and it had been for my whole life. I had grown up in residential community my whole childhood. I was at home in a group of people who were all doing the same thing. That's how I grew up in my family of origin, and my life as a nun was a total continuation of that. So the understanding of finding home in myself really deepened when I left the monastic community, because it was the first time that I wasn't syncing up with a group of people around me. I had to listen to something that was my truth, that for the first time was not reflected back at me. Nobody wanted me to leave. I had to go my own way, and there wasn't anything waiting for me on the outside. But I found out that when I just took that leap of faith, life met me, and I was taken care of. I didn't know what the next step was going to be, but I didn't have to know. I just had to be fully present with that one step. And then, as I took the next step, the next thing was revealed, and I was cared for, and I had what I needed. This was when I really understood the lines from the song, "Here is the Pure Land," which say, "The Sangha body is everywhere. My true home is right here." I had been singing that song for 20 years, but it wasn't till I left the monastery that I really understood, this is for real. The Sangha body is everywhere. My true home is right here. When Tai says he found his true home because he was in exile, when he was forced to leave Vietnam, when he says that the only reason he found his true home was because he was deprived of his physical home in Vietnam, I understood that for myself in a new and deeper way. So this experience of choosing to go into the wilderness, to exile myself, was this opportunity to know that I was going to be taken care of. And whatever that meant, I knew that I didn't have to worry. I could find some way to be safe inside myself, wherever I found myself.
Thank you so much, Kaira Jewel, for sharing that beautiful excerpt. I guess my question for you would be, could you share what the hardest part of writing Healing Our Way Home was for you? And on the flip side for that as well, not just the hard part, but the joy that you found in writing this.
Yeah, well, it was really, we talked this book into being, we didn't write it. We just edited it once we talked it out. Which feels really important in terms of our, this oral tradition, both in Buddhism of transmitting things orally before it was written down, and then the Black tradition of oral storytelling, passing down wisdom and learning, through speaking and listening to each other. I think one of the hardest things was like just kind of not knowing. The not knowing, really, until we got the transcripts, I didn't know if we had a book. Because we were just having these conversations, and they were amazing conversations, and I loved having them, but I couldn't see where we were, and some of these conversations, I think they spanned almost 2 years, because we started before the pandemic, and then we finished basically, like, I think 2022, our last one. So there was such a long, period that it was hard for me to track sometimes where we were. And so it was kind of just this going on faith. And then we our lives were so upended by the pandemic, and there was illnesses, there were deaths in the family, there were times, I think 6 months we went without being able to do much. And so it was kind of this like, well, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. We couldn't push it, we couldn't, but this kind of trust. But I think it was, just the kind of walking in the dark for a bit with how is this going to really manifest into something, and then I guess one of the best things about it was also it was the way in which I couldn't share what I needed to share if Valerie and Marisela, you hadn't shared what you had shared. Like, I couldn't tell my story without you two. And that feels so beautiful that we evoked things from each other, and that it's really like a three-legged stool. Without any of the legs, you wouldn't have it. It wouldn't be there. It couldn't stand. And so this real sense of interbeing with both of you, and just deep gratitude, and like every time we would get together, I just remember like being in awe of your stories, of your strength, and beauty and how pieces of my life got to be unfolded because of you. So I'm boundlessly grateful for that. Thank you. Thanks for the question.
Thank you so much for sharing. I don't know why I got a little choked up at that. Thank you. I'll move over to Valerie, if you wouldn't mind sharing an excerpt that spoke to you, please. Thank you.
So a deep bow. Dear Tai, dear Sister Chang Kang, and dear beautiful community that's gathered here. Wow, just looking on the screen and seeing the faces of so many people who have gathered here, I'm really just connecting with my heart. Yeah, Karen. Yeah, I know. So much love, and so much gratitude. And Marisela and Kaira Jewel. Yeah, just this long, beautiful friendship. And I'm so grateful to have spiritual friends, and how meaningful that is. And of course, Parallax, Liz, Jess, Hisei, the whole team, just endless deep bows of gratitude. So let me see if I can pull up the book. And I'm going to read from the introduction to the book. So for those of you who have the book, it's on page 5. And I'm sharing here a little bit about kind of how my spiritual journey began. And that was really one of the beautiful things about this book, is learning so much from each other about how we came to Buddhism, about our parents and our grandparents in our lives. So here's a little bit. On my bedroom dresser, I keep an old photograph of me as a reminder of the spiritual road I've traveled. It's a photo taken when I was in my early 30s on my first trip to India. I was standing at the arrivals gate at Indira Gandhi Airport, wearing a pair of dungarees, cowboy boots, a wool beret and vest, and a brown bomber leather jacket. Outside, it was a sweltering 98 degrees Fahrenheit, 36.6 degrees Celsius. I was clueless. At that moment, I had only one goal in mind. I was determined to see the Taj Mahal, and nothing and no one would stand in my way. Up until then, I had lived much of my life with a fierce, hard-nosed determination that showed itself not just in how I dressed, but in how I moved in the world, how I spoke to others, how I listened, or more accurately, how I didn't listen, how I took care of my body, the job I had, and my chosen career as a lawyer lobbyist. When I passed New Jersey bar exam in 1983, I had no intention of being a Dharma teacher. My intentions were crass. They were to make money, see the world, to make up for a youth poverty and scraping by to get out of Brooklyn. And Brooklyn was not the fancy, swanky place it is today. The big shot lawyer, I had the answer before the question was asked. I drove myself hard and others even harder. So I'm going to stop there to just give you a sense of where I was at.
Thank you so much for that. My question for you would be, who do you hope this book reaches? And what do you hope the ultimate message is for people to take away from the book?
Well, my hope is that the book will reach many, many people. You know, my friend Wendy Johnson was saying, life is short and art is long. A book lasts a long time. And so my hope is that this book will reach people who are very much like the person I just described. The hard-nosed, show up at Indira Gandhi Airport in 98 degrees with like a wool beret on, like completely clueless. And it will reach the person who is deeply devout and spiritual, and everyone in between. What I love about this book is, I think, is that it is accessible, that we engage in plain talk, real talk about our hopes and dreams, what we can't figure out, what we're trying to figure out. Some topics that conventionally are often not really discussed in particularly Buddhist circles. Topics like sexuality, intimacy, money, politics, you know, these kinds of topics. And so my hope is that it will reach many people and that there'll be something for everyone. This book was particularly written for people who identify as Black, Indigenous, and a person of color. And it lifts up many things that, for myself as a Black person, are important. Topics like my ancestry, my family, and where is joy? You know, I come from a long line of Jamaican people who worked themselves into a grave, you know, so the whole idea of finding joy is a really big topic in this book. And, you know, to share that with others, and all in service of our liberation in some way, shape, or form. So thanks for the question.
I just want to thank you all so much for those very moving and provoking excerpts that you've chosen to share, and also the background on how this wonderful book came about, the thoughts that went behind it, the community, and joy, and friendship that was strengthened from it. I know I'm touched by it, and I definitely feel like others who will pick up the book will be touched by it and inspired by it. I realize that I've been talking so much, and so I would love to open this up to others in the public who are here to also feel free to ask questions of the authors.
I don't want to insert, but since the floor is open, I do have a question that I would love to ask. But first of all, let me say this book is so beautiful. It is so healing. I mean, just in reading, and I get my formal copy tomorrow. I cannot wait because it is in a Catholic frame. The Lenten season begins tomorrow. And this is such a perfect book to begin and to walk through that intentional and deliberate just walk with God, right? Additional. And so I really, really appreciate it. You spoke about the accessibility of the book. And that was one of the things that I really loved about it, that no matter what faith-based tradition from which you come, that there is something there for just for everyone. But my particular question to you three is that as you went through the process of speaking this book, did it take you into deeper places of healing for yourselves? So that question, number one, and number two, just the reflection questions that you all included at the end of every chapter. How did those come about?
Dear community, dear Adar, I think, if I'm pronouncing. Yes. Thank you for this question. I'll just share that I had some really beautiful conversations with my family because of this book. I try to tell the story of, you know, of my upbringing and, you know, coming to the spiritual path that I've chosen. But I had some really beautiful conversations with both my parents and both my siblings where I was like, here's what I'm sharing. Is this right? And I learned so much in those conversations. I got stories given to me that I didn't have before that are extremely precious to me that I share in the book. And I hope I did justice to my family, and my brother and my dad are on the call. I'm so happy you're both with us today. My sister's trying to join and can't get the passcode, so I'm trying to help her. Anyway, but yes, to your question, that was the case for me. Some, you know, pieces of my life got integrated or woven together because of the deep sort of, yeah, inquiry, the kind of, you know, this ebb and flow between each other's stories, and like really wanting to represent things accurately. And you know, there were stories I had my whole life that weren't actually what happened, and so in the you know, conferring with family members, it was like, oh. So their voices are coming through too. Yeah, I'll let the other co-authors share. Thanks for that question.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm.
Thank you, Adar. I've known Adar for some 30 years. She's my sister from another mother. And as you know, we've been on our healing journey for these 30 years that we've known each other. And the healing that happened for me in this book was actually, sometimes when I think of this book, I get sad. Actually, there are parts of it that was hard, and you'll see that as you read it. Hard for me to reveal myself, my hurt and my suffering in these ways, but they just came out, and it's, you know, as is said. I think Archbishop Desmond Tutu says this. I'm sure others do too, but I'm remembering him more recently saying that we become who we are by the engagement we have with each other, and that happened. So my becoming healed happened because of us talking our healing. We talked our healing forward. Things that I've never revealed out of this body and mind. maybe in therapy, came forward. And it wasn't planned, and it wasn't part of, I'm going to do this and heal this in this conversation or in this process, but it happened. So I think there's a lot of healing. It's not a book that we wrote to show something to the world about who we are. It's a book that happened that that was very personal. So I will even say that when we finished and we said no more, and actually we were like, oh, should we do another chapter on this? I felt a little bit like, do we have to publish this? Actually, you can ask Valerie and Kaira Jewel. I kept saying that, actually, even after it was published. Do we have to make this public? And because it was that personal and that transformative for me, it felt like the pain sometimes, maybe we don't want to share it all because we're not yet ready to hold it. The container is not then ready yet. And yet somehow it's that living it and holding it that we realize how strong we are and how healed we become by sharing it. So yes, it was very, the process was healing, and I didn't have to pay any money. Thank you for the question, and invite others to share on the other question you asked, maybe.
Thank you. I do have one from Kathy Morris. They say, I teach yoga and meditation to incarcerated men in upstate New York, and I'm wondering what you think the most important teaching or sharing in your book might be for these beautiful men.
Thank you, Kathy. It's Kathy who asked this question. Yeah, that's such a powerful and beautiful question. And when I saw that in the chat, what immediately came to my mind was Kai's words about loving ourselves is accepting ourselves as we are, as we actually are. And I know for me, that's a lifelong journey, and really receiving myself. And that was the process of this book, was really receiving myself, receiving all of the wisdom that was coming from Kaira Jewel and from Marisela, the wisdom that was coming up for me in writing the book, in going back to my own ancestors and receiving their wisdom and maybe redefining it through my own lens. So yes, I mean, I think one huge part of the book is about accepting ourselves, loving ourselves, cultivating a sense of joy within ourselves. And this is a practice, right? And so I would say for those of us who are incarcerated, that the cultivation of this quality of inner freedom, inner joy, love within oneself, acceptance, huge. So turn it to the other co-authors. Love to hear what they have to say.
Dear community, I could just maybe jump in and offer I think there's a lot of teaching in just the form of the book, the process of the book, that it is a collective story. it's a chorus. It's a song where people have different parts, and I think polyphonic. There's this there's a rhythm to how we speak together, how we invite each other in, and so even beyond the actual words that we're sharing, I think that could be something to just to be informed by, of what can happen when we really give ourselves over to each other, where there's trust, where there's care, where there's real honoring that what we create together is much more than any one of us could create on our own. So something about community and friendship and allowing ourselves to be held, allowing ourselves to be, entrusting ourselves to spiritual community. I had a chance to share at a meditation group in San Quentin. I've gone there a few times. There's a meditation group there, and it's so beautiful when I'm with that group, because that group has been practicing for a long time, and everybody knows the form, and they just can fall into this community that's affirming, and everyone has a role. Like, I just remember, someone who had maybe a speech impediment or something. He was given the task of announcing, what was to happen in that ceremony that day, and he did it beautifully with dignity. And it was so beautiful just to see the community just be very supportive of each member in their uniqueness, and that everyone has something to offer, regardless of whatever unique things are part of their experience. So I hope that our book could inspire, could nourish that spirit of togetherness, of working together for folks in the prison that you work in, Kathy. Thank you for that.
I do have a question from the chat. I've encountered some anger, reactivity, and or intolerance, prejudice statements when I've participated or talked about things I'm dealing with. I'm Black and have invisible chronic illness, autism, and trauma. Any suggestions on seeking more spiritual support and healing? Some of this anger reactivity is from people who speak of racial justice or progress, and it feeds into me a sense I have to hide parts of myself and a feeling of not belonging in some of these spaces, and that differences are not accepted or understood. If you have any resources around inclusivity and empathy, please feel free to share.
Thank you for that question. I think one of the beautiful things about this book is that it's getting at healing that we're naming and broken into, nice topics and themes. So you can, bring yourself to, oh, I'm connected to that one. So let me, but if you read it carefully, it's a book about healing, and we all have something to heal. Not just the things that we specifically dive into, because they're the things that that needs healing for us. And it's not even all the things that needs healing for us that's there in the book. And so I think reading this book with an open understanding that there is healing to be done. There is healing that needs to happen, to reveal this self that is under that, all that needs the healing. And so whatever that is, that thing that is in need of attention, that is in need of pausing and looking into, and it may not just be pausing and looking into, it may require other avenues of support, right? This is only one. And yet the courage to one, read it or listen, or read it, and find your healing journey in it, and find your path of healing in it. I think that's the connection, the discovery. In Buddhism, the brilliance of the Buddha was to connect us all through something that we have in common, and this is suffering. And so that thing that we all have in common also is joy and liberation. That's right there, right next to it. And so I think this is what I'm inviting in this response, or in this comment, is whatever that is, that kind of suffering that we have, we all are suffering. And this book offers our ways that we have tried to figure out a journey of healing. And the invitation is to, I think each one of us say this in the book somehow, is we hope that our story connects somehow to your story, and that you can find that connection for your healing as well. Whatever that is that needs to be healing at that moment. And maybe after we heal that thing, it reveals something else that's been hidden under it that also requires attention and healing. The onion, right? The unlayering. So to not speak specifically only to one thing that requires healing, and yet to speak to all of it. That's the brilliance of the Buddha, actually, is that the journey is about healing, revealing the spirit self that is there and has been, layered and covered. And how do we find the antidote? And so if we look at maybe some of our stories, we might see our story in it. And it may be similar. And so the practices at the end are some of those questions that invite us into practicing with our trauma, our pain, our suffering, um, uh, to bring us together on that journey. Yeah. So I hope that maybe touched on some of what that question was. Thank you.
May I add to that, Marisela? That was so beautifully said. And I'm looking at Larry, and I deep bow, Larry, because you have been the teacher for me and for us on this, and that is to celebration, an acknowledgement. That was like the first BIPOC retreat in 2004, celebration of who we are. And I think, and the book is largely that too. It is a celebration. And as Marisela mentioned, there are resources, guided meditations, reflection questions, and you had a taste of the beautiful music that's so alive, and not just music, food as medicine, right? So I actually went back. One of the beauties of this book, I went back. My father passed in 2016. But one thing, the only thing that I wanted from when my father's estate was settled, one thing, the cookbook, because when he retired, he became a baker. And I wanted to have that cookbook and his recipes. And I share some of the recipes from this very old Jamaican cookbook, and the recipes are in the book. So food as medicine. There are many paths to healing. And thank you, Larry, for your teaching for us about how to live in the world with joy and to celebrate this life that we have. So deep bow and deep gratitude.
Just want to add that there are desserts too. Really yummy desserts.
Yes, please, Victoria.
Thank you. Well, now I'm all excited about the desserts. I highly encourage you to write a sequel, and all three of you contribute recipes that are have come from through family and friends and whatever. I think that's the most wonderful way to share love and build community is through food. Of course, this on the last night that anyone practicing Lent can say a thing like that and get away with it. My question actually is, well, first of all, I can't wait to read this book. I'm so excited. It's just, I just can't wait. So I'm almost sorry that I wish you would do another event like this, like to give us all time to get the book and read it and then meet again. My question actually is not a mechanical one, but I'm just interested in Valerie. You're a very prolific author, and I'm just so intrigued because I do some professional writing, and I also do lecturing, and I also do kind of like, well, I'm also a musician, so when I play a concert, I talk to the audience, so it's more informal than like giving an academic lecture. And for me, those are like totally not unrelated, but it's a very different way of expressing yourself. And so I was so intrigued to hear, because I didn't know anything at all about how the book came into existence until I came on this Zoom call. I would just love to hear a little bit more from all of you, but starting with you, Valerie, maybe because as far as I know about you, you've done a lot of writing, and I'm sure all three of you have. How that changes the whole experience, and how, as Marisela said earlier, she almost was wondering, do we have to publish this? Because there's a certain intimacy that comes out of conversation and an oral tradition in itself. I mean, I've often kind of wondered about that, even with with like religious texts and spiritual texts, and even with the suttas, like I think to myself, what did it actually sound like to hear Buddha? Like did he actually repeat every sentence 3 times and every phrase? Like, this, it's so different when you read something as opposed to hearing it. Anyway, I would just love to hear more about the process and how you see this book within the context of well, I don't know, like I want to see the cookbook sequel, but that's in other words, how does it fit in, and how do you feel about it now that it's going to like really launch into the world? That's a lot of questions in one. Take which one one's fit.
Victoria, thank you so much for the question. Beautiful question. And I can take the part about prolific writing piece. And yes, of course, I'm aware that our sisters here, Marisela, Kaira Jewel, many other people who are on this call at this moment have written many things. So I'm very, very aware of it. Our dear brother, Larry. And I say a couple things about that. The first is the last book I wrote, Hope Leans Forward, was an experience that you may have experienced, Victoria. You know, when you have something like you cannot not do it? You ever had that feeling like you can't not do something? Like it's so compelling, you must do it. That was that writing of the book. There was no way I could not write that book. And so that book was about this string of losses that happened sequentially in like a 26-month period, right at the time like we were writing this book. My whole life was turned upside down. And I was so lucky that I had spiritual friends, that I had Marisela and Kaira Jewel accompanying me. That was a huge part of my healing, the writing of the book and talking about it. Like Marisela is saying, talking about the things that are almost unspeakable. And then the other piece of the prolific stuff is it's not mine. That I inherited from my parents. They were people who would do 50 different things at one time. I mean, lay a brick wall, build, create sew a man's suit, cook a pot of peas and rice. I mean, they did like all these things. They had the capability of doing many different things at one time and doing it well. And part of it was they had to, and part of it was this was their constitution. Their nature was to do all of these things. And I inherited that from them. So I'm acknowledging that partly that's not mine, and partly it came from them and I got it. This is how it's passed through to me. So thank you for that question, and I'll bow out here. Love to hear from the others.
Looks like there's another question in the chat. Should we, do we have time to do one more question? I know we're close to our ending time.
I was actually hoping that I could get 3 more questions in that space and time, but let's see what we can do.
Do you want to read out Marianne's question?
Yes. And then I have 2 more after that from Anonymous, if that's okay.
Sure.
Do you think your stories would also resonate with an older Black man whose modus operandi, there, thanks to a lifetime of trauma and prejudice, is to have handled everything himself? He has an extreme distrust of knowledge coming from others, especially religion, and I'm hoping this book will open something for him.
I could just share briefly. It's hard to say, but we all three talk about our own experiences with racism and prejudice and trauma. So I think he would find in us kindred spirits. Um, and and boy, I learned so much listening to Valerie and Marisela share how they dealt with some really difficult situations. Yeah, sometimes, you know, we also learn from our mistakes, right? Of how we, you know, aren't able to catch ourselves in the moment. So there's a lot, I think, a lot in there that um, I think it's very relatable. You know, we're not experts, but we're really sharing our real, you know, the skid marks that were left from all the, you know, the smooth transitions or the ways we dealt with these difficult things and the not so smooth. And then there's some, you know, practical exercises too, some meditation, some. There's also in the book these just very, you know, anytime we mention a Buddhist teaching, we try to put it in a box and really break it down and explain what we have talked about. So there's anyone who doesn't have a Buddhist framework can hopefully find their way with all the different things we're pointing to in terms of teachings or ways of holding suffering, you know, how we can open ourselves and learn and grow.
Thank you so much for that. I have another question. Let me. I appreciate everyone who's adding them into the chat. This is from a Black woman. Was there any trepidation or concern regarding speaking your truths and sharing your stories as Black women in the tradition where Black women practitioners are few, in the Manga Saga and BIPOC spaces too, and where discussions of race can be viewed as dividing the Sangha?
Yes. To be succinct, yes, this was a huge topic. We had multiple discussions over months, not just among us as authors, but with people within the Plum Village community about issues of race and social equity, justice. And so, yeah, it was a huge topic. And I think that we have handled this with a lot of integrity and with a lot of truth, speaking our truth, and respecting, you know, that we don't have we have a lens, and that there's a lot wider lens out there, and there can be many and multiple truths. But yeah, that was a really big topic. I don't know, Marisela, if you want to jump in.
Um, yeah. Um, I think we listened to comments and suggestions, and then we also respected our lived experience. You know, honestly, we had to make sure Parallax would publish this. Yeah, see here I go into like the muddy waters. You call my name, so there we go. Uh,
Don't, please don't.
yeah, I mean, we as the person who asked the question said, because we're not used to hearing the Dharma from different cultural experiences. So then when a different cultural experience brings that through their lens, it may look different and sound different, and not as others may have become used to hearing and listening and understanding and believing even, right, that it's Dharma. And so even the title, we had discussion about the title Black Buddhist Teachings, to ground that in the fact that these are Black Buddhist teachings, right? So intentionality around bringing that forward, not because it's not so, we're not so used to hearing that. Even, we're still in a time where Black and Buddhists coming together we're still getting used to that, right? We're still swallowing that without choking. And so, we had discussion about that subtitle with intentionality. So yes, there was deep discussion about positioning this and bringing the Dharma into another way of how you share kitchen table talk, right? And that's what it was, right? We spoke this book out. You could say this was the original way. We couldn't, and it is the way the Buddha taught. The Buddha spoke it out, and we spoke it out, and then it got transcribed. So yeah, thank you for the question. It's really good to just name these things. That we are still in transition. Yeah, and the Dharma is in transition, not losing the Dharma root, and also bringing it into the lives of everybody, so everybody can get free. Yeah, because that's really what it's about.
Thank you so much. Okay, final question, and then I'll stop bothering everyone and get everyone off for the rest of their day. This one is, in every healing conversation, I think there are healing silences. What are some memorable silences from your conversation with one another, and what did they mark? And in addition to that, you mentioned how you went long periods of time without being able to talk. When did you record these conversations with each other as part of that writing? I made that a very long question. Answer as you will.
Thank you, Liz. Thank you for facilitating this so beautifully, this conversation. So I think our conversation started in 2019. That's my recollection, and we recorded them. I think we had 9 conversations that we recorded, so like each one became a chapter, more or less. And we finished in 2022, so it was over about 3 years. Memorable silences, that's a very beautiful question. I think there was just very deep respect for the pain that we shared about our journeys. There was, just a real pausing and taking in when someone would touch, really, it was well digested pain, but it was still pain, and also I think the deep insights were moments that were very contemplative among the 3 of us, when someone would share how transformation took place, or how healing happened in the midst of that pain, that difficulty. So those are the places I remember really just being more still to take in the other's wisdom. Thank you for that question.
Well, I really want to thank everyone so much for taking the time again today, for the authors, for Dr. Larry Ward, and for all of you who took the time to participate, ask questions, and just open yourself to this experience. It's been an absolute joy for me and my Parallax team to be able to work with you wonderful ladies, you wonderful people. We request and just ask very kindly. Reviews are so important for getting the books out there to others who need it. And we hope that if the book touches you in any way, if you have praise or concerns, questions, or deeper insight that you would love for the authors to maybe talk about in another book, in addition to recipes, please add those into your reviews. Would absolutely love to see those on places like Goodreads, Barnes & Nobles, Amazon, and of course, word of mouth, and especially to your local bookshops and bookstores and libraries. Also, there's a note in the chat, and that you'll see that Healing Our Way Home, Black Buddhist Teachings on Ancestors During Liberation will have a book reading and discussion at the IMS Book Club that you can register. And just in case I got lost in the chat, thank you so much, Dorothy, for putting that. I dropped it there as well. For each of our lovely authors, is there anything that you would like to say in closing before we end this launch?
Marisela B, I want to say something, which is that encouraging publishers. I'm reading this wonderful book called Sisterhood, which is about Black feminist writings during the 80s and 90s. It's a beautiful book, and how they use that sisterhood and bringing their voice as political power through that lens, right? Through writing, through being wherever, writing from activist spaces, justice, different justice academia, whatever. So I want to share that publishers still look at Black and BIPOC writers, like this, and so we are still in movement building, having to convince publishers that as BIPOC people we can write, and that and that we can write wisdom and joy and liberation. And so the way we show that is how many books are bought when people who look like us, talk like us, write like us, walk like us, write things. And so that's still very well connected, those two things. And so there are many people here tonight who are also authors, writers, and also use literature as a way of resistance and love and liberation. And so you're buying the book is part of that. And actually, as a good organizer, I'm inviting everyone to not just buy a book, but invite another person to buy a book. It's like we do with meetings. You say, bring someone to the meeting. And so we grow our base. And so I'm inviting everyone to do just that. Bring someone to buy the book with you, so that we continue to build the clarity in the world around that everybody has the opportunity and the life experiences to share about liberation. Yes, thank you. Thank you for being here, everyone.
On that note, also to encourage everyone, if everyone on this call wrote a review on Amazon, Goodreads, or Barnes & Noble, the book would take off. And so I want to encourage everyone, that's on this call now to consider writing a review. As Marisela said, this matters. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your love. Thank you for your support. Larry, deep bow, deep gratitude to you.
Just echoing all the gratitude. I had so much joy scanning through people's faces during this call and your names. So just so grateful for so many dear friends and dear Sangha members and community. Thank you so much. And book clubs are another way to share the book. So think of, inviting friends to read the book with you, create a book club. Yeah, deep, deep gratitude to everyone at Parallax and to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much. And I do have one last person to thank, the person who put this all together, Jess. Jess Brown is an absolutely wonderful, amazing part of the team. And I just wanted to make sure that I gave special thanks to them for organizing this, putting this together, and allowing me to facilitate. Just wanted to make sure that I offered my flowers to Jess. Thank you again. Thank you. Well, as sad as I am for this evening to end, I just recognize my battery's at 8%. So at that, I will wrap this up, and I hope that each and every one of you are able to walk away with a nugget of love, joy, wisdom, advice, something in your hearts and your minds today. Thank you all again for taking the time to join. Your time is precious, and the fact that you decided to spend it with us is truly a wonderful gift. So thank you all, and I hope you all have for those who celebrate, a wonderful Mardi Gras, Fat Tuesday. And just a wonderful rest of your week. And looking forward to reading your reviews, and everyone follow up with desserts, apparently. Very excited about this. Thank you.
Take care, everyone. Thank you.
Everyone.